Hey everybody, this is Brian Goulet of the Goulet Pen Company and inknouveau.com. This is another of my first impression videos, which is literally the first time I take the pen out of the box, ink it up, and check it out. Today I'm excited because I'm doing the Namiki Falcon, which is with a soft medium nib. The reason I'm excited about this is because I've heard a lot about this over the last, 6 months, a year, something like that. There's been a lot of talk about flexible nib pens. There aren't a lot of them out there, and the Namiki Falcon is one of the very few modern flex nib pens that you can get without going to a nibmeister or somebody special like that. So anyway, I want to check it out for myself and see what all the hype is about. And I'm going to share with you my first experience, the good and the bad, with inking up a Namiki Falcon. Here we go. Alright, so here we have the Namiki Falcon fountain pen, black, medium soft fine nib. I've opened the Pilot boxes before, and Pilot and Namiki are under the same umbrella, so I'm familiar with the packaging a little bit. It comes in a white box. This is unique. This doesn't come in the Pilot pens. This is a Namiki thing. So I guess it's just some instructions, how to use the ink cartridge, how to, fill with a converter, all that good stuff in a bunch of different languages. Actually, most of it is not in English, only about the first, let's see, like the first 3 pages it seems. There's like 3 pages of English, and the rest of you don't need to worry about. But it's all simple stuff. It's not really that different. Oh, it looks like you can use an eyedropper fill. Oh, that's neat. I didn't know that. Okay, so it looks like you can use it with the ink cartridge, which I believe comes with it. Using a plate press. I'm not sure what that is. See, I need to read up on all this stuff. But anyway, piston converter, replacing a converter, blah, blah, blah. Okay, anyway, so those are the instructions. You can read those for yourself later, or I'll post questions or whatever on it later. Here's the Pilot and Namiki box. This one comes with the Namiki logo, and it looks like it's, I don't know if it's laser engraved or how they do that exactly. But anyway, it's kind of indented in there. It's got a little texture to it. Overall, it's a pretty nice box, though. Most pens don't come in a box this nice. And there we go. There is the Falcon. Now, there are the resin version Falcons, and there are metal versions as well. The reason I went with the resin is because it's almost half the price, and that was pretty much my deciding factor. Plus, resin's a little lighter, which is better for longer periods of writing. Nice pen, black, with gold trim. I like it. It looks really classy, really kind of simple design. The clip has kind of like a little curve up to it, which makes it easier, I believe, when you're putting it into your shirt pocket. Not something that I do often because I don't wear shirts with pockets. And in fact, almost all my pens are desk pens because I don't travel a lot. I am pretty stationary. So I noticed there's like some kind of fuzzy stuff or whatever from the inside of the box that seems to be kind of sticking to this black resin, and that's a little annoying, but it's not really prohibitive to anything. I guess it would be kind of annoying if you were going to store this in the box. Then every time you take it out, you'd have this kind of fuzzy stuff on the pen. So that's something to take into consideration. The box itself, if you saw my Custom 74 on the Pilot video, it's going to be very similar. It's just got kind of a cheap plastic, not plastic, but like elastic thing that holds the pen on there. It's got, I guess, more use and care instructions inside, which I'm familiar with the Pilot pens. And then it comes with an ink cartridge and kind of like a secret James Bond hidden compartment down here. So there's the ink cartridge. It's a proprietary Pilot Namiki cartridge. So you can either refill the cartridge, use this one as is, or you can use the converter, which comes in the pen. So let me put all this stuff back. I know I struggled a little bit with the Custom 74 video. Let's see if I've gotten any practice since then. Kind of bend it a little bit. Okay, there we go. That was better. Okay, so anyway, that's the case. I don't really care so much about the case. I care more about the pen. So anyway, the pen itself is not a huge pen. I'm a big guy. I have big hands. My hands are about 8 inches long from wrist to fingertip. So just from looking at it, I would say this pen is about 5 to 5.5 inches long capped. The size-wise, I would say it's probably about the size of a Pelikan M200. maybe the size of like a Lamy Studio, a little bit shorter though. It's not a huge pen. I have a Pelican M800 and it's definitely not that big, you know, so that's something. But threads to go on the pen, and then it just sticks on the back to post. That's nice. The balance is really pretty good. Pretty good. Normally, I don't like to post my pens because it provides too much back weight on the pen, and I like to have more weight on the nib. But this one is not bad, especially from my hand. The nib on this thing, if I can just show you, I'll try and get a little detail in here because the nib is worth a close-up. Most fountain pen nibs are kind of the same, and they're not really worth noting the difference. But this nib is really kind of different, and this is, I guess, where the Falcon kind of gets its name. It's got kind of this little beak to the nib, which I think is probably part of the design of the way that it flexes. But it's kind of a neat, kind of an interesting look to it, which is definitely, you know, just screams Namiki Falcon. For any of you wondering out there, I can't remember if it's a 14 or 18 karat, 14 karat. Okay, so you know, it's going to have some flex to it, but maybe not quite as much as an 18 karat nib would have stock, you know, fresh out of the box. But this is another thing to note with 14 karat versus 18 karat. If you have a 14 karat nib, those are better for getting work done by a nibmeister to add flex to it. If you have an 18 karat nib, you really can't do much with it in terms of adding additional flex. But if you want to have a more flexible nib, the 14 karat on the Falcon is good. So, you know, a lot of what you might have heard about flex nib Namiki Falcons is done, work done by a nibmeister. So anyway, okay. The pen is nice. It comes, I believe it comes with the converter here. I hope so, or else I'm screwed. Okay, yeah. Comes with a converter inside there. This is what is commonly known, I guess, as the Pilot Kon-50 converter, even though that's technically not the name for it. That seems to be what all the other retailers and whatnot are calling it. So I will use it by that name, because if you're doing a Google search, that's what you're probably going to find it under, is the Kon-50. It's a proprietary Pilot cartridge converter, and it only works in Pilot and Namiki pens. Certain ones of them. Some others use different converters, but anyway, we won't get too much into that. So it's just pressure fit on there, and it's got a good snug feel. So what ink am I going to use to ink up this pen? Well, really the choice was pretty easy for me. You know, Iroshizuku just came to mind immediately because it's a Pilot Namiki brand ink, and one of my favorites is Kon-peki. Big fan of this ink. You know, it's extremely expensive stuff, but it's really nice. I like it. The bottle is really nice. So I figured, why not? The bottle, I won't get too much into the bottle because this video is going to get too long, but it's got kind of this dip in the bottom, which is cool when you get towards the end of it. So I'm going to ink it up because I've used this before. I used it in my Custom 74 video, and I'm familiar with the ink and how it performs. So it's not something I'm not afraid to use. Typically, when I like to try a new pen, I also like to try a new ink at the same time, just because I have so many, have access to so many. But really what you should do when you're using a new pen is use a paper and an ink that you're familiar with. That way you can judge the pen just purely for itself. And any characteristics in terms of smoothness and things like that of the nib, it won't be because the ink is influencing too much. It's you can just judge the pen. So I'm familiar with the smoothness of this ink, and I can just use it, you know, and judge the pen for itself. So anyway, the way I'm going to ink this thing up, I take the converter, bring it all the way down, and I'm going to stick the whole nib down into the ink and completely submerge it. I know it's hard to see in the video. Completely submerge it until it gets into the grip section of the pen. And then I draw ink up into it. Now, one trick that I like to do a lot, you can see I got all this empty space here in the converter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly draw it back down into the ink. And what I'm doing now is I'm saturating that feed. So now there's ink in that feed where there was air before. And when I draw it back up into the pen, it should help and give me a little bit more ink. So you can see that. I got more ink in that converter now, just by doing that simple step and nothing else. It's a nice little trick when you're inking up a pen for the first time, or when you're inking up a fresh ink color, something, a pen that hasn't been used or it's been cleaned recently. Then it allows you to get more ink into your body of your pen without having to do anything too crazy. So a little bit of Oh yeah, I like that blue. A little bit of paper towel action here on the section so I don't get my hands all inky, even though it almost always happens anyway, just because that's the nature of how I work. So basically you take the pen body, screw it back on there, and this sucker is all inked up and ready to go. Now, I don't really know what to expect, to be quite honest with you, with this pen, because I have never used a Falcon before, and it's really kind of a different pen. I'm actually going to use it posted, because I know most of you out there like to post. I'm typically not a poster, but I'm going to try it posted because the pen's got a nice weight, even with it posted. Let's see. It's a little on the light side without it posted, but it doesn't throw the balance off. So anyway, I'm just going to kind of write a few lines. Okay, that's kind of nice. The fact that I'm putting very, very light pressure. In fact, I'm hardly even doing anything at all, and you know, I'm getting some good flow out of this pen. Now, one thing I'm noticing is that it's flowing out really well. Part of that is a characteristic of the ink. Actually, let me zoom in for you because this will help to show off the ink a little bit. I mean, to show off the writability of the pen. So obviously, one of the first things I want to do is start flexing the crap out of this nib. I'm going to try not to go too crazy, but there we go. I'm getting some line variation. Okay, okay. The only previous experience I really have with flex nibs, I have a Waterman 52 and a Maybe Todd's Swallow. No, it's a Swan, I think. Not a Swallow, a Swan. So I don't have a vast, and the Noodler's Flex Pen, that's the other thing I've experienced with. So I don't have vast experience with flex nibs. You know, my handwriting is not that great with a flex nib, but as you can see here, typically with flexes, I kind of just goof around and like to draw with them. This is actually, I gotta be honest, I'm kind of surprised at how smooth the nib is. I was expecting it to be kind of scratchy, and I think that's probably partly because this is a medium, and that's why I'm not getting like a hairline. I mean, here was pretty good, and actually if I turn it upside down, I may be able to get kind of a hairline. But then I really lose a lot of the color of that ink, which I kind of expect. If I was using a darker, more saturated ink color, I would probably get a darker color there, but I'm getting really light ink when I flip that nib upside down. So I don't typically like to write like that, but if you're in a pinch and you're writing on some paper that's really got awful bleed through or feathering, you can flip that thing over and do it like that. Just make sure you don't press on the nib too hard that way because you don't want to damage it. So anyway, if you flip it over the other way, you know, and oh man, it just really flows. It's nice and wet. I'm really kind of like that. I think part of that's the ink. The ink is pretty wet, but you know, the nib itself has some good line variation to it. It's hard to find a modern flex nib pen. They're not easy to make. You know, the Noodler's ones tend to get a lot of attention because they're $14 and they're accessible to a lot of people, but they are limited in their availability. The Namiki Falcon has kind of been the standby for the last few years. But I kind of like this. It writes nicely. I can write easily, you know, without having a lot of variation. When I'm flexing it, I kind of have to put some effort into it a little bit. I would not classify it as what's known as a wet noodle, which is where it's just like butter and you press on it and just spreads nice and easily. But it's not too hard. I would actually say it probably takes about the same amount of pressure as the Noodler's Flex Pen does. But it's, you know, this one, the Noodler's Flex Pen is different because it has steel tines and this one is 14 karat gold. But yeah, I get that nice spread. I don't know how well you can see that, especially with the ink, but I'm getting a nice spread on the tines, and it's really cool. You know, what a lot of the flex pen use ends up getting is for people that like to sketch and draw, and I can see why, because it's kind of like, it's almost like a paintbrush, you know, because you can really kind of get good line variation. So I could see where you would have some really fun stuff to do with, you know, drawing and sketching and things like that. I am not a sketch artist, so please forgive my, oh gosh, I'm drawing off the frame. Please forgive my horrible sketching and whatnot. You know, I'm really just kind of a hack, but you can just see a little bit how you could see drawing some nice trees or, you know, cool things like that if you're into that stuff. The Falcon's pretty good for that. I know it's kind of popular among artists. And one of the cool things is when you're using this type of pen with an ink that's lesser saturated, like the Kon-peki, you get a lot of that color variation in the ink. You can see here where I started writing and I was just getting a regular flow of ink, but then where when I kind of let the tines go back, it dumped a little bit of ink out there, and it kind of flowed back into my line and gave me that color variation there. So it's going from kind of a light blue to a really dark saturated blue, which is really cool. So anyway, I'm actually, I gotta say, I'm pleasantly surprised that this thing writes so smooth. Typically with flex pens, I don't have very high expectations, especially with modern flex pens, but this one's kind of nice. So let me see if I can do a little Namiki here. Like I said, I am definitely not a flex pen expert when it comes to use, but I kind of hack around. Now the one thing that you want to do when you're using a flex pen is you never want to flex it when you're going up or across. You only flex it when you're drawing back on the pen. So that's something you want to watch out for. But anyway, that's kind of just my quickie review here of the Namiki Falcon soft fine flex pen, or sorry, soft medium flexible nib pen. Hopefully this is helpful to you somewhat. My overall impression is good. Is it worth $140, $150? That's going to be up to you. I would say, when you're looking at a pen in this price range, you're getting a 14 karat nib, you're getting a nice classic design, good box, good packaging, reputable brand to stand behind it. I would say, yeah, it's probably worth that if you want a flexible nib pen that's going to last you a while and be some fun that you can also use as kind of a regular pen too. Overall, I would say I'm pretty happy with how this has turned out. So that's it for my first time using a Namiki Falcon. Hopefully you find this review useful. This is not a very thorough review. This is just my first time using it. Hopefully I'll get to something more thorough in the future. If you have any questions or anything like that, you can email me at brian@gouletpens.com or hit me up on Twitter @gouletpens. Thanks a lot, and write on.